There are movies you watch once and forget. Then there are movies that burrow so deep into your memory that even decades later, you can still hear the music, feel the tension, and picture every single frame like it happened yesterday. Dirty Dancing is that kind of movie. Released in 1987, it became more than just a film. It became a cultural landmark, a rite of passage, and for an entire generation, the definition of what it means to fall in love against all odds. People have watched it 10 times, 20 times, some have lost count entirely. They quote it. They recreate it at weddings. They tear up at the same moments every single time, like it's the first time all over again. But here's the thing about movies you think you know inside and out. Sometimes the most jaw-dropping truths are hiding right there in plain sight, and you've been walking past them without even realizing it. What really went on behind the scenes of Dirty Dancing is far more dramatic, raw, and honestly more fascinating than the story playing out on screen. The tension you felt watching Baby and Johnny, the electricity that practically crackled through your television, a lot of that wasn't scripted. It wasn't manufactured in some Hollywood editing room. It was real, messy, complicated, deeply human real. And once you understand what was actually happening behind the cameras, you will never watch this film the same way again. Not the lake scene, not the rehearsal scenes, and definitely not that final lift. So settle in, because we are about to pull back the curtain on one of cinema's most beloved films, and what's underneath is nothing short of shocking. Let's start with a moment that has been frozen in the collective memory of movie lovers everywhere. That final lift. You know exactly what we're talking about. Patrick Swayze standing center stage, arms raised, as Jennifer Grey launches herself through the air and lands above him like she was born to fly. It is, without question, one of the most iconic images in the history of American cinema. It has been parodied, recreated, immortalized. And yet, the story behind how that moment came to exist is almost more dramatic than the scene itself. Here is what most people don't know. Jennifer Grey refused to rehearse the lift. Not once during the weeks of intense dance preparation that led up to filming did she attempt it. While the rest of the cast and crew were fine-tuning every step, every count, every camera angle, Jennifer simply would not do it. She was terrified, genuinely, viscerally terrified, of being hoisted above a man's head and potentially dropped in front of an entire production crew. This wasn't shyness or modesty. This was real anxiety, the kind that sits in your chest and refuses to move no matter how much logic you throw at it. Think about what that meant for everyone around her. The director, the choreographer, the producers, they all knew that the entire emotional payoff of the film depended on this one moment. The whole movie builds toward it. Everything Baby goes through, every failure and breakthrough and stolen glance, it all culminates in that final run across the dance floor and that leap of faith into Johnny's arms. And the woman at the center of it all was saying she wouldn't even attempt it until the cameras were rolling. The pressure in that room must have been extraordinary. And then the day came. No rehearsal. No safety net of repeated attempts to build confidence. Just Jennifer Grey, taking a running start and trusting another human being with her body and her fear. The result is the scene that has made people cry at weddings for nearly 4 decades. But what makes it so deeply affecting isn't the choreography. It's the fact that you can see the fear on her face. That flicker of terror right before she commits to the leap, the sharp intake of breath, the way her whole body seems to surrender to the moment. None of that was performance. That was Jennifer Grey, not Baby, facing something that genuinely frightened her and doing it anyway. That is what you have been feeling all these years without knowing it. That is why the scene hits so hard. It is not fiction. It is courage. Now let's talk about another scene that lives in the golden, sun-drenched part of everyone's memory, the lake rehearsal sequence. Johnny guiding Baby through the water, the two of them laughing and stumbling, surrounded by what looks like the most perfect summer afternoon imaginable. It is soft, dreamy, intimate. It feels like a memory of a summer you wish you'd had. The truth behind that scene is almost cruelly ironic. That water was not warm. That afternoon was not summer. Those scenes were filmed in October at Mountain Lake in Virginia, and the temperatures were hovering just above freezing. We're not talking about slightly chilly water that takes a moment to adjust to. We're talking about the kind of cold that makes your muscles seize and your breath come in sharp, involuntary gasps. The kind of cold that, if you stay in it long enough, stops being uncomfortable and starts being dangerous. Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey were standing in that water, take after take, smiling and laughing and making it look effortless, while their bodies were screaming at them to get out. The crew reportedly kept stacks of towels and warm robes ready at the edge of the water, and the moment director Emile Ardolino called cut, they would sprint in to wrap the actors up before any real harm was done. Those smiles you see as the actors emerge from the water, that relief on their faces that you probably read as joy and chemistry, that was genuine relief. That was two people incredibly grateful to no longer be submerged in near-freezing water. And if that wasn't enough, Swayze was dealing with something far more serious than cold water. He had undergone knee surgery shortly before production began, and he had not fully recovered by the time filming started. The kind of physical demands that Dirty Dancing placed on its lead, the dancing, the lifting, the constant movement, would be challenging for a perfectly healthy athlete. Swayze was doing all of it on a knee that was still healing and in ice-cold water, which is one of the worst environments imaginable for a recovering joint. Most people in that situation would have asked for modifications, taken pain relief, or, at the very least, acknowledged their limitations. Swayze refused pain medication entirely and pushed through every single scene. Every lift you see in that film, including the ones in freezing water, was executed by a man quietly enduring significant physical pain. What this tells us is something important about why that lake scene feels the way it does. The tenderness you see from Swayze in those moments, the way he steadies Jennifer, corrects her posture, speaks to her with patience. That wasn't purely character work. He was also, on some level, genuinely trying to help her get through the discomfort as quickly and efficiently as possible. There was a shared suffering happening between those two performers, and somehow, that silent mutual endurance translated into some of the most warmly remembered footage in the entire film. Art is strange that way. Here is where the story gets truly layered. Everything we have covered so far, the fear, the cold, the physical pain, all of it happened against the backdrop of a relationship between the two leads that was, to put it gently, complicated. Patrick Swayze and Jennifer Grey did not meet on the set of Dirty Dancing. They had worked together before on the 1984 war film Red Dawn, and by Jennifer's own account, the experience had not left her with warm feelings toward her co-star. Swayze had a reputation for being high-energy, physically boisterous, fond of pranks, and intensely focused on his work in ways that didn't always leave room for the people around him to find their footing. Jennifer found him exhausting. She found his energy overwhelming. She has said in interviews that she simply could not take it, and those are not the words of someone who was mildly annoyed. That is someone who found the dynamic genuinely difficult. So when the studio wanted to cast Swayze as Johnny Castle, Jennifer's reaction was not enthusiasm. She pushed back. She was hesitant in a way that went beyond professional concerns about casting chemistry. She simply did not want to spend months in close physical and emotional proximity to someone who had grated on her so significantly in the past. It is worth pausing on that for a moment, because what came next is remarkable. She agreed anyway, and whatever her reasons for doing so, that decision gave the world one of the greatest on-screen romances in cinema history. The dynamic between them on set was not smooth. Swayze was a trained, disciplined dancer with a perfectionist's obsessive need to get every detail right. Jennifer was more fluid, more improvisational, more prone to breaking into laughter at unexpected moments. In his memoir, Swayze described moments of real frustration, scenes that had to be redone repeatedly because Jennifer would lose her composure and dissolve into giggles. Producer Linda Gottlieb was candid enough to say that Swayze felt Jennifer was a wimp, while consistently praising him for his reliability and professionalism. These are not two people in sync. These were two people grinding against each other, professionally and personally, just trying to get through a film. And yet that grinding, that friction, that unresolved tension, it shows up on screen as electricity. When you watch Baby and Johnny and you feel that push and pull, That sense of two people circling each other, drawn together, but not entirely comfortable. That is not just good writing or clever direction. That is the actual energy between two real human beings who genuinely had unresolved friction between them, and it leaked into every scene they shared. Jennifer Grey said herself, and with striking clarity, tension, she said, looks much hotter on screen than love does. She was right. The scenes in Dirty Dancing that people replay most obsessively, the ones that feel most alive and crackling with something nameless, are the ones where the discomfort between Baby and Johnny is most palpable. And now you know where that discomfort came from. One of the most telling examples of how their real dynamic shaped the film is a small moment that most viewers have probably smiled at without understanding where it actually came from. During the famous Hungry Eyes training montage, there is a moment where Johnny runs his fingers slowly down Baby's arm, and she completely loses it. She starts laughing, breaks character entirely, and cannot pull herself back together. It's charming. It's endearing. It makes you feel like these two people genuinely enjoy each other. What was actually happening is this. They had filmed that particular sequence approximately 20 times. 20 attempts at the same intimate, slow, deliberately sensual piece of choreography. By the time they got to the take that ended up in the final cut, Jennifer had crossed some invisible threshold of composure, and she simply could not hold it together anymore. The laughter was not warmth. It was the edge of frustration, the body's way of releasing pressure that had been building for hours of repeated, close contact work with someone who was not entirely her favorite person. And Swayze's reaction in that moment, that flash of irritation, the way he looks at her with barely concealed exasperation, that is not Johnny Castle being challenged by Baby's lightness. That is Patrick Swayze, genuinely fed up, genuinely done with the giggles, genuinely ready to move on. The director saw it, recognized it for what it was, and made the decision to keep it. That moment of real friction between two real people who were exhausting each other became one of the most beloved and frequently cited moments of chemistry in the entire film. That is perhaps the most profound lesson that Dirty Dancing accidentally teaches us about what makes movies feel real. It is not always the carefully constructed scenes, the perfectly lit close-ups, or the dialogue that screenwriters labor over for months. Sometimes it is the unplanned moments, the genuine emotions that slip through despite everyone's best efforts at professionalism, that make a film breathe. Years after the film wrapped, both Swayze and Grey spoke about their experience in ways that were honest and, in some cases, genuinely moving. Jennifer Grey reflected on their dynamic with a kind of raw self-awareness that is rare to hear from anyone in any industry. She expressed regret, real, felt regret, about not being able to simply appreciate Swayze for who he was instead of wishing he was different. That kind of reflection, the acknowledgement that she had spent their time together projecting expectations onto him rather than meeting him where he was, speaks to a level of